Imagine standing in a room where someone is trying to provoke you. Their words are sharp, their tone is confident, and they expect you to react. They believe that if they can make you angry, they have already won. Most people fall into this trap without realizing it. They answer emotion with emotion, raise their voice to match the other person's, and leave the conversation feeling exhausted, frustrated, and powerless. But the truly wise understand a different kind of strength. They know that the loudest response is rarely the strongest one. Real power is found in calmness. It is found in the ability to think before speaking, to remain steady when others lose control, and to choose words that come from wisdom instead of wounded pride. A single thoughtful response can end an argument that endless shouting never could. And sometimes the most powerful response is not a sentence at all. It is the confidence to remain silent. The purpose of this speech is not to teach manipulation or clever comebacks. It is to teach emotional discipline, self-respect, and the quiet confidence that cannot be shaken by another person's opinions. When you master your mind, you stop giving others the power to control your emotions. You begin responding instead of reacting, listening instead of assuming, and speaking only when your words carry value. Today, you will discover 7 smart responses that are built on patience, wisdom, and inner strength. These are not techniques for defeating people. They are principles for mastering yourself, because the person who controls their own mind can walk through criticism without losing confidence, face disrespect without abandoning dignity, and leave every conversation with their peace still intact. That is the kind of strength that earns lasting respect, and it is a strength anyone can develop with practice. Before you learn to speak with power, you must first learn to become comfortable with silence. Most people believe strength is measured by how quickly they answer, how loudly they defend themselves, or how cleverly they respond to criticism. But true strength is revealed in the few seconds between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. Those few seconds may seem insignificant, yet they determine whether you are acting from wisdom or merely reacting from emotion. Think about how often people lose control because they feel pressured to respond immediately. Someone questions their abilities, and they rush to defend themselves. Someone insults them, and they fire back without thinking. Someone spreads false assumptions, and they desperately try to explain everything. In every one of these situations, emotions take the driver's seat. The mind becomes clouded, judgment weakens, and words are spoken that cannot be taken back. The person who reacts instantly is often controlled by the situation. The person who pauses, however, remains in control of themselves. That brief moment of stillness creates space for clarity. Instead of allowing anger to make the decision, wisdom has a chance to speak. Instead of feeding conflict, you begin choosing peace. This is not because you are afraid to respond. It is because you understand that not every situation deserves your immediate attention. Many people mistake a calm pause for hesitation or weakness. In reality, it is one of the greatest signs of confidence. Those who are secure within themselves do not feel the need to prove their intelligence every second. They do not panic when challenged, nor do they feel threatened by every opinion they hear. They know their value does not depend on winning every conversation. Their confidence comes from within, not from the approval of others. Imagine someone speaking harshly to you in front of other people. Their goal is not always to share truth. Sometimes they simply want to provoke a reaction. They expect your face to change, your voice to rise, and your emotions to take over. The moment you give them that reaction, they know they have influenced your state of mind. They have turned your emotions into something they can control. But when you pause, everything changes. You remain calm, you breathe, you observe instead of reacting. Suddenly, the other person realizes their words have not shaken you. They expected a battle, but were met with composure. This often creates far more impact than any clever comeback ever could. The pause is powerful because it gives you time to ask important questions. Is this conversation worth my energy? Will my response improve the situation or simply create more conflict? Am I speaking to solve a problem or merely satisfy my pride? These questions rarely appear in an emotional reaction, but they naturally arise when you allow yourself a moment of stillness. There is another reason this habit is so valuable. Your emotions are temporary, but your words can remain with people for years. One sentence spoken in anger can damage trust, relationships, or opportunities that took years to build. Many people spend months repairing the consequences of something they said in only a few seconds. Learning to pause protects you from becoming a prisoner of temporary emotions. This habit also changes the way people see you. Calm individuals naturally earn respect because they demonstrate emotional maturity. Others begin to notice that you cannot be easily manipulated. They realize that criticism does not immediately shake your confidence. They see someone who thinks carefully before speaking, instead of someone who simply reacts to every situation. Over time, your reputation becomes stronger than any argument you could have won. Pausing does not mean suppressing your feelings or pretending nothing affects you. It means acknowledging your emotions without allowing them to control your behavior. You can feel disappointment without becoming disrespectful. You can feel anger without becoming aggressive. You can feel hurt without losing your dignity. Emotional discipline is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to guide emotion with wisdom. This practice extends far beyond difficult conversations. It improves your decisions at work, strengthens your relationships, and helps you navigate life's daily challenges with greater clarity. When unexpected problems arise, you become the person who remains steady while others panic. When opportunities appear, you think carefully before acting. Your mind becomes less reactive and more intentional, allowing you to make choices that align with your values rather than your impulses. The more you practice this habit, the more natural it becomes. At first, the pause may feel uncomfortable because your mind is accustomed to reacting quickly. But with patience, that brief silence transforms into one of your greatest strengths. It becomes a shield that protects your peace, your reputation, and your self-respect. You no longer feel pressure to answer every criticism or defend every misunderstanding. Instead, you learn that your greatest power lies not in speaking first, but in speaking wisely. Always remember that every situation offers you two choices. You can allow the world to decide your emotions, or you can decide them for yourself. The first choice leads to frustration because your peace depends on other people's behavior. The second choice leads to freedom because your peace remains under your own control. And once you discover that kind of inner stability, you realize something remarkable. The strongest response is often born from the quiet moment before a single word is spoken. Words have the power to build trust, inspire courage, and resolve conflict, but they can also deepen wounds when they are spoken without thought. One of the greatest signs of emotional intelligence is not how much you can say, but how wisely you choose your words. Many people believe that strength is measured by having the last word in every disagreement. In reality, true strength is measured by knowing which words deserve to be spoken and which should remain unspoken. The person who learns this lesson gains something far more valuable than victory in an argument. They gain control over their own life. Whenever someone criticizes you, misunderstands you, or speaks with disrespect, your emotions immediately encourage you to respond. Anger tells you to fight back. Pride tells you to prove yourself. Fear tells you to defend every accusation. But wisdom quietly asks a different question. Will these words improve the situation? That single question has the power to transform the entire conversation. It shifts your attention away from satisfying your emotions and toward protecting your peace. Speaking from emotion is easy because it requires no discipline. Anyone can raise their voice, interrupt another person, or say something hurtful in the heat of the moment. It takes no training to react. But speaking with purpose requires patience. It requires the ability to slow down your thoughts and separate temporary feelings from lasting values. This is why calm people often leave the strongest impression. They are not controlled by the emotional weather around them. They carry their own inner climate wherever they go. Think about the conversations you regret the most. Chances are they were not caused by silence. They were caused by words spoken too quickly. Perhaps you said something you did not truly mean. Perhaps you tried to win an argument instead of understanding another person. Perhaps you allowed frustration to choose your vocabulary. Once words leave your mouth, they cannot be taken back. Apologies may heal relationships, but they cannot erase memories. That is why wise people treat every sentence as something valuable. They understand that every word carries consequences. There is an old truth that remains timeless. Speaking less often allows your words to carry greater weight. People naturally pay closer attention to someone who speaks with intention rather than someone who fills every moment with unnecessary opinions. Constant talking often weakens your influence because your message becomes lost in excessive explanation. Calm and thoughtful speech, however, commands attention. When you speak only after careful reflection, people recognize that your words are worth listening to. This does not mean becoming quiet out of fear, or avoiding every difficult conversation. There are moments when you must speak clearly and confidently. There are times when you must defend your values, establish boundaries, or stand up for what is right. The difference lies in your motivation. Are you speaking to satisfy your ego, or are you speaking to serve the truth? One seeks victory over people. The other seeks clarity and understanding. Imagine someone insulting you in front of others. Most people would immediately feel embarrassed and angry. Their first instinct would be to return the insult with an even harsher one. Yet what usually happens next? The conflict grows. More words are exchanged. More people become involved. What began as a single careless comment becomes a battle that leaves everyone drained. But now imagine responding calmly. You simply say, I don't believe speaking to each other that way helps either of us. Suddenly, the entire atmosphere changes. Instead of adding fuel to the fire, you remove it. Your calmness exposes the weakness of unnecessary aggression without creating more hostility. People often mistake calm speech for weakness because they confuse noise with strength. In reality, remaining composed when emotions are running high is one of the hardest skills to master. Anyone can react. Few can remain centered. Your calm words demonstrate confidence because they show that your emotional state does not depend on another person's behavior. You are no longer allowing someone else's attitude to determine your own. Another important lesson is that not every criticism deserves an explanation. Many people spend enormous amounts of energy trying to convince everyone that they are right. They explain every decision, defend every action, and answer every accusation. But no amount of explanation will satisfy someone who has already decided not to understand you. Sometimes your actions will speak more clearly than your arguments ever could. Instead of wasting energy defending your character, continue living according to your principles. Over time, consistency becomes the strongest answer. There is also wisdom in choosing simple language instead of complicated arguments. You do not need long speeches to communicate confidence. A few sincere words often carry more strength than endless debate. Phrases like, I understand your perspective, let's agree to disagree, or I have nothing more to add, can end conversations with dignity. They show that your goal is not domination but peace. They protect your self-respect without attacking someone else's. Learning to speak with purpose also means listening with patience. Many people prepare their reply while the other person is still talking. They are not listening to understand. They are listening for an opportunity to respond. True listening requires humility. It allows you to hear not only the words being spoken, but also the emotions behind them. Sometimes people are not asking for an argument. They are asking to be heard. When you genuinely listen, you often discover that conflict becomes easier to resolve because understanding replaces assumption. As you continue developing this habit, you will notice a remarkable transformation. Conversations that once overwhelmed you begin to feel manageable. Insults lose much of their power because you no longer allow them to control your emotions. Disagreements become opportunities to practice patience rather than battles that must be won. Your confidence grows, not because people stop criticizing you, but because you stop allowing every opinion to disturb your inner peace. Always remember that your words are a reflection of your character. They reveal the quality of your thoughts long before they influence anyone else. Choose words that build rather than destroy. Choose honesty instead of exaggeration. Choose calmness instead of anger. Choose wisdom instead of impulse. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to strengthen your discipline and protect your peace. When your words are guided by purpose instead of emotion, you gain something far greater than the satisfaction of winning an argument. You earn lasting respect, preserve your inner balance, and become the kind of person whose quiet confidence speaks louder than any raised voice. One of the greatest mistakes people make during difficult conversations is believing they must immediately defend themselves. The moment someone criticizes them, questions their decisions, or speaks with confidence, they feel pressure to respond with an equally strong statement. But wisdom follows a different path. Instead of rushing to make a point, it begins by seeking understanding. A carefully chosen question has the power to change the entire direction of a conversation because it encourages thinking rather than reacting. When someone speaks with anger or makes an unfair accusation, your first instinct may be to prove them wrong. Yet, the more you argue, the more emotional the discussion often becomes. Each side tries harder to protect their pride, and before long, neither person is truly listening. The original issue disappears, replaced by a battle of egos. This is why intelligent people understand that asking the right question is often more powerful than giving the perfect answer. Imagine someone tells you you always make bad decisions. Most people would immediately respond, "No, I don't," and the argument would continue. But instead, calmly asking, "Can you tell me which decision you're referring to?" Suddenly, the conversation moves away from vague criticism and toward specific facts. If the other person has a genuine concern, they now have the opportunity to explain it clearly. If they were speaking only from emotion, they may realize that their accusation has little foundation. In either case, you remain composed, thoughtful, and in control of yourself. Questions also reveal intentions. Not everyone who speaks loudly is searching for truth. Some people simply want attention, agreement, or control. When you ask respectful questions, you quietly discover which type of person you are dealing with. Someone who genuinely wants to solve a problem will usually appreciate the opportunity to explain their perspective. Someone who only wants conflict often becomes uncomfortable because they expected resistance, not curiosity. This approach also teaches an important lesson about humility. Asking questions does not mean you admit defeat or weakness. It means you are confident enough to recognize that understanding is more valuable than winning. Strong people are not afraid to learn. They are not threatened by another person's viewpoint because they know that listening carefully can reveal information they might otherwise miss. Consider how many unnecessary conflicts could end if people simply ask, "What makes you see it that way?" This single question communicates respect without surrendering your own beliefs. It tells the other person that you are willing to listen, but it also encourages them to think more carefully about what they are saying. Many opinions lose their certainty when someone is asked to explain the reasoning behind them. Questions can also protect you from making false assumptions. Human beings often interpret words through their emotions rather than through facts. We hear one sentence and immediately imagine the speaker's intentions. But assumptions create misunderstandings. By asking for clarification, you replace imagination with understanding. Instead of reacting to what you think someone meant, you respond to what they actually intended to say. There is another hidden strength in thoughtful questions. They shift your focus away from defending your pride and toward discovering the truth. This simple change transforms your mindset. Instead of asking yourself, "How can I prove I'm right?" you begin asking, "What can I learn here?" That perspective creates personal growth. Even if the conversation is uncomfortable, you leave it wiser than before. Of course, not every person will answer honestly. Some individuals avoid responsibility. Others may continue speaking emotionally or refuse to engage respectfully. Yet even then, your questions still serve an important purpose. They remind you that your responsibility is not to force wisdom into someone else's mind. Your responsibility is to act with integrity, regardless of how others behave. When your actions remain guided by patience and respect, you never lose your dignity, even if the other person refuses to change. Developing this habit requires practice because emotions naturally encourage immediate reactions. The next time someone criticizes you, resist the urge to interrupt. Listen completely. Allow a brief pause. Then ask one sincere question that invites clarity instead of conflict. You may be surprised by how quickly tension begins to fade. Sometimes the other person realizes they have exaggerated. Sometimes they explain themselves more clearly. And sometimes you discover that there was a misunderstanding all along. Over time, this habit strengthens every area of your life. It improves your relationships because people feel heard instead of judged. It makes you a better leader because you understand before making decisions. It earns trust because others recognize that you value fairness over ego. Most importantly, it strengthens your own character. You become someone who is not controlled by emotions but guided by wisdom. Always remember that intelligence is not measured by how many arguments you win. It is measured by how much truth you are willing to seek. The strongest voice in a conversation is not always the loudest one. More often, it belongs to the person who knows when to speak, when to listen, and when to ask the one question that brings light where there was only confusion. When your questions come from genuine curiosity instead of hidden pride, they do more than silence conflict. They open the door to understanding, wisdom, and lasting inner strength. There is a quiet strength that many people overlook because it cannot be measured by volume, speed, or clever words. In a world where everyone feels pressure to respond instantly, silence has become rare. Yet silence is one of the greatest forms of self-control a person can develop. It is not the silence of fear or uncertainty. It is the silence that comes from confidence. It is the ability to remain calm when others expect you to react, to remain steady when someone tries to pull you into unnecessary conflict, and to understand that not every situation deserves your voice. Many people believe they must always defend themselves. They think every criticism requires an explanation, every insult demands a comeback, and every misunderstanding must be corrected immediately. But if you spend your life answering every opinion, you will soon discover that your peace belongs to everyone except you. There will always be someone who disagrees with you, misunderstands you, or judges you without knowing your story. If you make it your mission to satisfy every mind, you will never have time to strengthen your own. Think about how often arguments continue simply because both people refuse to stop talking. One harsh sentence leads to another. Pride replaces understanding. Voices become louder, but wisdom becomes quieter. At that point, the conversation is no longer about solving a problem. It becomes a competition to prove who is right. Yet very few people leave such arguments feeling victorious. Most leave with regret, stress, and words they wish they had never spoken. Silence interrupts that cycle. It removes the fuel that keeps unnecessary conflict alive. When someone expects anger but receives calmness instead, they often lose the advantage they believed they had. They cannot easily manipulate someone who refuses to react emotionally. They cannot continue a battle when the other person has chosen peace over pride. This does not mean you should remain silent in the face of injustice or ignore conversations that truly matter. There are moments when speaking is necessary. There are times when your voice must protect your values, defend the vulnerable, or express the truth with courage. Wisdom lies in knowing the difference between a meaningful conversation and a meaningless confrontation. Speaking at the right time shows strength, but remaining silent at the right time shows even greater maturity. Many people confuse silence with weakness because they only recognize strength when it is loud. But consider the mountains. They stand firm through storms without making a sound. Consider the deep ocean. Its greatest power exists beneath a calm surface. Nature reminds us that true strength does not constantly announce itself. It simply exists with quiet confidence. In the same way, a disciplined person does not need to prove their intelligence in every conversation. They allow their actions, consistency, and character to speak where words are unnecessary. One of the greatest gifts silence offers is clarity. When you stop reacting immediately, you begin observing more carefully. You notice the emotions behind another person's words. You recognize whether they seek understanding or simply attention. You see whether they are speaking from pain, frustration, insecurity, or genuine concern. This understanding allows you to respond wisely instead of impulsively. Imagine someone trying to provoke you with harsh comments. They expect you to become defensive because they have already imagined the argument in their mind. But instead of reacting, you remain composed. You listen. You breathe. You choose not to rush your response. In that moment, something remarkable happens. You remain in control of yourself while they remain controlled by their emotions. That is real power, not controlling another person, but refusing to let another person control you. Silence also teaches patience, and patience is one of the foundations of wisdom. A patient mind does not chase the final word. It understands that winning an argument is often less valuable than protecting inner peace. Many relationships have been damaged because someone insisted on saying one more sentence. Many opportunities have been lost because emotions spoke before wisdom had a chance. Learning when to stop speaking is just as important as learning what to say. There is another reason silence is so powerful. It encourages reflection. When you immediately answer every accusation, the other person rarely examines their own behavior. But when you respond with calm restraint, they are sometimes left alone with their own words. Without resistance to fight against, they begin hearing themselves more clearly. Not everyone will change, but some will recognize the unnecessary hostility they brought into the conversation. Your silence becomes a mirror rather than a weapon. This principle also applies to your daily life beyond conflict. There is tremendous value in spending quiet moments with your own thoughts. Constant noise from conversations, social media, and endless opinions can make it difficult to hear your own inner voice. Silence creates space for self-awareness. It allows you to reflect on your actions, strengthen your character, and make decisions based on wisdom rather than pressure. The more comfortable you become with silence, the less dependent you become on external approval. Never mistake silence for surrender. Walking away from pointless conflict is not giving up. It is choosing something greater than the temporary satisfaction of being right. Every unnecessary argument you avoid is energy saved for your goals, your family, your purpose, and your personal growth. Your time is valuable. Your attention is valuable. Your peace is valuable. Do not spend them trying to convince people who have already decided not to understand. As your self-discipline grows, people will notice something different about you. They will realize that insults no longer shake your confidence, criticism no longer steals your peace, and negativity no longer controls your emotions. They may wonder why you no longer react the way you once did. The answer is simple. You have learned that your greatest strength is not found in having the loudest voice, but in having the calmest mind. And once your peace becomes stronger than your need to respond, very few people will have the power to disturb you again. There will always be moments in life when someone treats you unfairly. They may insult you, mock your efforts, question your abilities, or deliberately try to embarrass you in front of others. Your first instinct may be to fight back, to prove them wrong, or to make them feel the same pain they caused you. That reaction feels natural because the human mind often believes that revenge will restore dignity. But if you observe carefully, revenge rarely brings peace. It only extends the conflict and keeps your mind tied to the very person who disturbed it. Think about how much energy people waste replaying conversations in their minds. They imagine better comebacks, dream of embarrassing the other person, or wait for an opportunity to return the insult. While they are busy carrying that emotional burden, the other person may have already moved on. This is how resentment steals your peace. It convinces you that winning against someone else is more important than mastering yourself. True strength is revealed when you refuse to let another person's behavior dictate your own. Someone else's disrespect should never become the reason you abandon your values. If another person chooses anger, that is their decision. If they choose dishonesty, that is their character. Your responsibility is not to mirror their behavior, but to remain faithful to your own principles. Many people misunderstand confidence. They think confidence means always having the final word or never allowing anyone to challenge them. Real confidence is much quieter. It does not panic when criticized because it does not depend on constant approval. It understands that not every accusation deserves a defense, and not every insult deserves attention. A confident person knows who they are, and because of that, they do not feel compelled to prove themselves to everyone they meet. Protecting your self-respect does not require aggression. It requires healthy boundaries. There is a significant difference between being kind and allowing people to mistreat you. Kindness without boundaries becomes weakness, while boundaries without kindness become hostility. Wisdom lives between those two extremes. You can remain respectful while making it clear that disrespect is unacceptable. Sometimes this means calmly saying, "I don't appreciate being spoken to that way." Other times it means ending a conversation that has become disrespectful instead of continuing an argument that serves no purpose. Walking away is not surrender when staying only damages your peace. In fact, knowing when to leave is often one of the greatest demonstrations of emotional maturity. People who constantly seek conflict are often surprised by someone who refuses to participate. They expect resistance, excuses, or emotional reactions. When they are met with calm confidence instead, they lose the control they hope to gain. This does not happen because you defeated them with clever words. It happens because you refuse to hand them your emotional balance. There is also an important lesson in recognizing that not every opinion has equal value. If someone who knows nothing about your journey criticizes your path, must you carry their judgment? If someone who has never built discipline questions your commitment, should their words define your confidence? The answer is no. Wisdom teaches you to consider the source before accepting the message. Constructive advice from sincere people deserves attention. Empty criticism from those who simply wish to discourage you deserves very little. Another mistake people make is believing that forgiveness means accepting bad behavior. Forgiveness does not mean pretending nothing happened. It means refusing to let bitterness occupy your heart. You can forgive someone while still choosing distance. You can wish them well without inviting them back into your life. Forgiveness frees your own mind far more than it excuses another person's actions. Your self-respect grows stronger every time you choose principles over pride. Pride wants to win every argument. Principles want to protect your character. Pride says, make them regret what they said. Principles say, do not become someone you would not respect. The path of pride may feel satisfying for a moment, but the path of principle builds a reputation that lasts for years. There will be occasions when remaining calm feels difficult. Your emotions will urge you to respond immediately. Your ego will whisper that silence makes you look weak. But remember that emotional control is a skill developed through practice. Every time you choose patience over revenge, you strengthen your discipline. Every time you refuse to answer hatred with hatred, you become harder to manipulate. Every time you protect your dignity without attacking someone else's, your confidence becomes rooted deeper within yourself. People may not always remember the arguments you won, but they will remember the character you displayed. They will remember the person who remained composed while others lost control. They will remember someone who could defend their boundaries without humiliating others. That kind of strength cannot be faked because it comes from consistent self-mastery rather than temporary emotion. At the end of the day, your greatest responsibility is not to change everyone around you. It is to preserve the person you are becoming. Never trade your peace for revenge, your dignity for an argument, or your values for a moment of satisfaction. Protect your self-respect with calmness. Stand firm in your principles. And remember that the strongest response is not making someone else feel small. It is walking away with your integrity untouched, your mind at peace, and your character stronger than it was before. The greatest victory you will ever achieve is not over another person. It is over yourself. Many people spend years trying to control conversations, influence opinions, or prove their intelligence. They believe that if they can always have the last word, they have won. But the truth is very different. Winning an argument does not always mean winning in life. You may leave a conversation feeling victorious, yet still carry anger, resentment, or regret for hours, or even days afterward. That is not strength. Real strength is walking away with your peace untouched. Life will constantly test your emotional discipline. Someone will misunderstand your intentions. Someone will criticize your efforts without knowing your story. Someone will question your decisions simply because they see the world differently. You cannot stop these moments from happening. They are part of being human. The mistake most people make is believing they must respond to everything. They feel responsible for correcting every misunderstanding, defending every accusation, and answering every insult. Slowly, they become exhausted because they are trying to control something that has never been within their control, the opinions of other people. The only thing that has always belonged to you is your own mind. That is where your real influence begins. When you learn to govern your thoughts instead of being governed by your emotions, every conversation changes. You no longer speak because your pride has been wounded. You speak because your words have purpose. You no longer react to every negative comment as though it defines your worth. Instead, you recognize that another person's words often reveal more about their state of mind than about your character. Think of your mind as the captain of a ship crossing a stormy ocean. The waves represent criticism, rejection, conflict, and disappointment. The wind changes direction without warning. Some storms are small, while others seem overwhelming. If the captain panics every time the sea becomes rough, the ship will never reach its destination. But when the captain remains calm, reads the conditions wisely, and stays focused on the course, even the strongest storm eventually passes. Your emotions are like the waves. Your wisdom is the captain. The waves may rise, but they do not have to determine your direction. This is why emotional control is far more valuable than verbal skill. Anyone can memorize clever responses. Anyone can raise their voice. Anyone can interrupt another person or attempt to dominate a conversation. But very few people possess the discipline to remain composed when they are being challenged. That kind of composure cannot be borrowed from a book or learned overnight. It is built through daily practice. Every difficult conversation becomes an opportunity to strengthen it. Every disagreement becomes another lesson in patience. Every insult becomes a chance to prove that your peace is worth more than your ego. Imagine two people facing the same criticism. The first reacts instantly. Their voice becomes louder, their breathing becomes faster, and their emotions begin controlling every sentence. Hours later, they replay the conversation in their mind, wishing they had said something different. The second person listens carefully, pauses before speaking, and answers only after deciding whether a response is even necessary. They leave the conversation with the same calmness they had before it began. The criticism may have reached their ears, but it never reached their identity. Which person possesses greater strength? The answer has nothing to do with intelligence or education. It has everything to do with self-mastery. Many people believe confidence comes from convincing others that they are right. True confidence requires no such effort. It comes from knowing who you are, regardless of who agrees with you. A confident person does not feel threatened by disagreement because their identity is not built upon constant validation. They understand that respect cannot be forced and approval cannot be demanded. Instead of chasing acceptance, they focus on becoming someone whose actions speak louder than endless explanations. As your self-control grows, something remarkable begins to happen. Situations that once disturbed you no longer have the same effect. The rude comment that would have ruined your entire day now passes like a cloud across the sky. The criticism that once made you question yourself now becomes useful feedback or harmless noise. You begin noticing that your greatest source of peace is not found in changing other people, but in strengthening your own perspective. People may still gossip. They may still judge, misunderstand, or underestimate you. None of that disappears. What changes is your relationship with those experiences. Instead of allowing them to occupy your thoughts, you let them pass without giving them unnecessary importance. You stop carrying emotional burdens that were never yours to carry. You stop wasting precious energy trying to explain yourself to people who have already decided not to understand. You recognize that silence, patience, and steady character often communicate far more than endless arguments ever could. Never forget that every conversation offers you two choices. You can allow another person's behavior to determine your emotional state, or you can allow your principles to guide your response. One path leads to frustration and regret. The other leads to confidence and inner freedom. The decision belongs to you every single time. When you master yourself, you no longer fear difficult conversations because your peace no longer depends on perfect circumstances. You understand that true power is not measured by how many people you can silence with your words, but by how few people can disturb your mind. That is the highest form of strength. It cannot be taken away by criticism, shaken by disrespect, or destroyed by rejection. It grows stronger every time you choose wisdom over impulse, patience over anger, and character over ego. And once you develop that kind of inner control, you will discover that the most powerful person in any conversation is rarely the one who speaks the most. It is the one who has completely mastered themselves.